What's going on, everybody, and welcome to today's show. If you're new to the show, my name is Ray. I'm an outfitter in Northwest Missouri called RMA Outfitters. I have 26 years of guiding experience, and I've been an outfitter for 17 years. Today, we have a special guest on the show. His name is Lewis from Dirty South Taxidermy.
Nice meeting you guys. Glad to be
So,
here.
what would you say?
Glad to be here.
Glad to be here. What is that, German?
Yeah.
Today, we're just going to be talking about as a hunter's aspect of preparing your animal and getting it ready when you're in the field, and that's very important in many cases. And then we want to see the brain of a hunter and a taxidermist on that side about kind of like what you want,
Oh
done
yeah.
and what you want us to do because sometimes like we're here and we're kind of lost in limbo of kind of what the taxidermist wants. And it all depends on what the
Oh
taxidermist
yeah.
is, right?
And that's something that as a hunter, if you're gonna harvest an animal, you should talk to your taxidermist before you harvest it, just to get his preference on what he wants and he or she. Um. So yeah, it's something that you should do before you even harvest that animal.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. There's so many different ways to prep your animal and get it ready.
Yep.
So, I mean, what really got you into hunting? Like, what was your, let's say, your like aha moment that you were like, yes, this
Yeah.
is what I love to do.
So right after high school, my buddy was like, "Hey man, let's go duck hunting." He was submitting me in all the lotteries, and I didn't know what I was getting myself into. Nobody in my family hunts, and I went out there. First time in waders, I was duck hunting, and to this day, it was the best duck hunting I've ever seen. Just flocks of ducks coming in. We were being picky, and I was like, I don't even know what I'm shooting at, but I know I could pick at certain things.
You're shooting at other people's
Yeah,
wads.
yeah, for sure. And then my buddy looks at me. He's like, "Hey, you're never gonna see this again in your life." And I was like, "Ah," he was right. To this day, I've gotten duck hunting hundreds of times. That was the best day, and I've been trying to chase it ever since. So it
It's
just opened my whole hunting world.
it's amazing how sometimes you have like those magical moments, and you got to experience off the rip on your first
Yeah.
one, and then it's kind of downhill sometimes from there. But yeah, I remember once I asked permission from a farmer, please, and she's like, all right, you can go ahead and bow hunt, you seem nice enough and you're respectful. And, I told her the animals that I were after, mature bucks. And so I put the stand in this one spot. Never been hunted. This place has never been hunted in the whole time she's owned it. So we're talking 20, 30 years. And I sit there. I probably, and this is in the timber, not on a feed field. I probably had like 50 something deer walk next to me within range.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, whoa. This is like the holy grail of hunting. I sat that stand probably like 20 more times and I never saw more than 3 deer. And I don't know if it was because a farmer down the road was cutting a cornfield and it just pushed, or that day was migration day and they just packed their bags and
Yeah.
said we're moving our
I'm
little
out.
hive somewhere else, or I don't know what was going on there. But it's amazing how, you know especially when you've hunted long enough,
Yeah.
you can, like, you're comparing it backwards, and I'm sure you're gonna have other moments that you're gonna sit in a spot and be like,
Yeah.
you know this is it, and then you go back and you're like, man,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
happened here? This is weird.
Yep.
you know it's definitely it's amazing how Mother Nature, especially like, in South Florida in the Everglades, you hunt public land a bunch and I hunt public land a bunch, and like last season you had a
Yeah. I had a crazy
crazy
year on camera.
roller coaster. What was it? What was that deer's name? Krusty.
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 Yep. I had Krusty there, and
Krusty.
great Everglades buck.
It was a great Everglades buck.
Opening day, I was there in the tree, and I hear these two guys walk behind me like they're walking through the mall. And I tell you that I went the next day, and they killed him somewhere else. And I was like, well, I had him every day on camera, but that's the way it goes in public land.
I remember when you had told me, I think these guys might have shot Krusty. And so I had told, Lewis here, I told him, I said, listen, a tactic sometimes that I use
Yeah.
is I will park far away from where I'm entering to trick people to think,
Yep.
oh, look, there's somebody hunting here. Or if they know my truck, oh, Ray's hunting here. We're gonna go here. So I park my truck away from it, and then I walk
Yep.
hundreds of yards. So I told him to, kind of do the same
Yeah,
thing.
and it was a double-edged sword because they didn't see my truck there, and they're like, "Oh, this spot's open," so they walked in, and yeah, so I guess that's something you got to think about when you're out there.
Gosh,
You know,
I remember I went
damn
to
if I do, or damn if I don't.
I went to the check station guy the next day because I was gonna go hunt the other end, and I walked to the check station guy. I signed in, and I'm like, "Hey, have any bucks been shot?" And he's like, "Oh, a matter of fact, there was a great buck that was shot." And he hobbles over to me and he shows me the picture, and it's like I've seen 300 trail cam pictures of this deer. So
Yep.
I'm like, poor Krusty.
Yep. So Krusty had like these triangles over his eyes that made him look like a clown. So it was easy to distinguish. Oh, yeah, it hurts. Hurts this day.
Yeah,
But
yeah. But I mean,
yeah,
we had a lot of deer
yeah, we did.
kind of mapped out there,
Yeah,
especially you were on one side and I was on the other, and we were
yeah,
getting good bucks there. So
yeah, for sure.
hopefully we
So
draw that this year. That would be great.
yeah,
So, so let's jump into some stuff here. One big thing is that I hear a lot of people talk of is time of shot. Like I shot the deer and I have to rush to get it out of the woods
yeah,
because the cape is going to spoil and the meat is going to spoil. And, coming from Florida, I think, we can kind of fall back on where that's not really true. I mean,
yeah. I feel like there's a lot of things that go into it. You know, like if it dies in the shaded area, or the heat in South Florida is pretty bad. So
in the water too.
in the night, it depends when you're tracking them. But from what I've learned, you have about like 12 hours, I'd say, to get him out of
Yeah,
there. I
yeah.
wouldn't ride around with him in the back of my truck and like
No, I
parade
wouldn't.
him around town. But
I wouldn't go to McDonald's and
yeah, like if you get him home, you gotta cape him as soon as you can and
Yeah.
put that cape in the freezer. But
But I've had deer that I've shot at 7 in the morning, and I haven't been able to get him out
yeah,
till like 1, because a lot of places in public land you can't drive. You got to drag this animal the
oh,
whole
yeah,
way
yeah,
out. So
yeah,
sometimes you got to gut the deer and then you just drag him out.
yeah.
But I've had it where 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon and that deer's been shot at 7 and everything's perfectly fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong. Now, you shoot that deer at 7 and you have to let it lay, and then you go the next day. Yeah,
Mhm.
well,
Yeah,
I don't know about
yeah,
I don't know about that one.
yeah.
You know what I
No,
mean?
it's true.
But
No, like that, like the deer I killed in Missouri. I hit a bad shot. We had to wait
yeah,
how long? Like
oof, that was like, well, when'd you shoot that deer? In the morning? Yeah,
yeah,
you shot him in the
like probably
morning,
like around noon.
and then that's a deer that actually presented like a lung shot and ended
Yeah,
up being like a liver shot.
and that's like the last video you posted. I just got caught up in the moment. I didn't, stop him, and he just kept walking as I shot.
It's hard too. Your heart is pumping
Yeah,
out of your chest, going. You're so jacked up, and you know plus these bows are so fast, and sometimes that plays with our minds too.
hmm
And it's a vital importance that you would have been in the lungs, and now you're in the guts.
yep,
And it's that simple, just a margin. And it's off, but it worked out. I think we
yeah,
found him that night, like at, I don't know, we found him at
yeah.
nighttime.
You're right. It was early in the morning. Yeah, we found him that
Yeah,
night.
we
Like,
found that night really late.
but it was a hot day. So it just depends on how the animal sits.
Yeah,
He was kind of swollen by that point. We didn't take any meat out. The
no,
cape was
no.
good,
But
but
remember, we had looked at the meat and it was like black already.
yeah, yeah, it
That
was.
it kind of the guts soaked into it a lot, and
Yep.
I think the back straps
But,
were okay. But
but as far as the whole cape, it was
yeah, cape was
perfect,
fine.
fine.
Yeah, cape was
So
fine. Coyotes didn't get to it. That was great.
yep.
So, just uh,
Yeah,
be mindful of the time. Be mindful of the time that you shot your deer at. But be careful. Sometimes people drive by. Sometimes that don't know any better, and you shot that deer at 7, and it's 10 or 11 o'clock, and they're already telling you, well, the meat's bad. It's not bad.
yeah,
We hunt these animals because we love the meat and we love the trophy and we love every part of this animal.
yep.
So don't let anybody, just make your own choice.
Yeah.
You're
Play it by ear.
yeah, 100%. Next thing is ways to cape animals. So
Yeah.
I have this odd thing about myself where I have to cape my own, and anywhere I go, even when I went to Africa, it was I'm sure the pH there was like, oh my goodness. But I had every animal I shot, I had to, even I shot a kudu in the mountains, and I'm like, hey, I need to keep my own animal, and not that I know any better. It's just I feel like it
Yeah.
completes my puzzle. I'm the one that harvested the animal, and I feel like I'm the one that needs to take a knife to it and
Yep.
not just watch somebody, which is fine.
Oh yeah.
If you don't know any better, that's fine. But to me, I know how to cape an animal. So to
Yep.
me, it was like, all right, well, I need to get over there and cape. So there's different ways to cape your animal,
Yep.
right? And the way I personally do it, what I'll do is from the back of their hooves, the back of their legs, where the white meets the brown, I'll split that color and I'll make that incision, and I'll go up the chest to the belly, and then I'll do the same thing on this one, and I'll go up the chest to the belly, and I'll make a Y like this, and then I'll go around their chest cavity all the way around, and then I'll start caping it back, and then I'll cut their heads off at the base,
Yep.
and then when I go to flesh their head out, I'll make a small incision in the back in between their ears, and then go to their horns,
Mhm.
and then cape their skull out. But some
Yeah.
like it different. Some like it zippered all the way down. I mean, what do
Yeah.
you? What's your?
So my preference is for like a whitetail. The white incision is probably the best way. I know as you go into the bigger animals like elk, a red stag, they like the zipper because there's just no way you're gonna be able to take that out of their head.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So
I didn't think of that.
as far as whitetails, a white incision is pretty typical. But like I said, it's something that you gotta speak to your taxidermist with and see what he likes because everyone's different. That's just how I like it. Um, and even before I got into taxidermy, I didn't know how to keep my own animals. And you can watch all the YouTube videos you want.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, when it's time, you're fumbling. You might nick it or what, but at least you're able to do it. It just makes it that much more personable.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Well, I'm sure like if somebody, maybe this is the way I learned.
yeah,
I'm sure like if a hunter called you one day and said, "Hey, the day you go to flesh ahead, can you call me?"
yeah,
and teach him, because I did that years ago. I called the taxidermist and I was like, "Man, can you teach me how to flesh out a head?" Because when you're on the go, sometimes it's easier for me to, let's just put in perspective. You shoot a 150-inch deer, 160, whatever the thing is, but a big framed deer, or just a wide deer, doesn't have to be inch wise, just a
yeah.
wide deer. You're not gonna fit that in a 100-quart cooler.
No,
It's a lot of the times you see people going down the road and that cooler's up,
yeah,
and that head's sticking out of here, and you're just begging for cape failure.
yeah,
You're begging for hair slippage. So I feel like it's important as us hunters to learn that little aspect of being able to cape that skin
yeah,
off of it.
yeah.
So I'm
So
sure somebody reached out to you.
oh yeah, and even if anybody here in South Florida that needs help, I'll be able to help you go through that process or even teach you. Maybe I'll make a YouTube video. I'm sure you're gonna do it
Yeah,
or
yeah.
something on Instagram.
Well, we could do
But
it together at your studio there, and
yeah,
lay one on the table and flesh
yeah,
it out.
yeah.
That'll be a good one.
But
Another thing on that topic of fleshing out the head is CWD,
yeah,
and
yeah. So that's a big deal. They're getting really strict on that, and I know like if you harvest something from another state or even sometimes county to county, you got to make sure
Yep.
that you take out the the antler base and this discard of the head, or if you want a euro mount, you got to make sure you take out the eyes and the brain. And I would just take all the meat from there and take it to either put it in the freezer so you could do it yourself, or take it to a taxidermist so you could do a euro mount.
what I've done in the past is, when someone says, "Oh, I want a Euro mount,"
Yeah.
there can't be no brain matter
Nothing.
that crosses the eyes, the
Yeah.
tongue. All of that needs to be out. If you're in a pinch and you're by yourself, what you can do, what I've done is, that hole in the back of their head.
Yep.
So what I'll do is I'll get like a coat hanger or a piece of metal.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah, screwdriver, anything.
just really mix it up good in there, and then you get a hose and
Yeah.
just put a hose to it and just flush it, flush it, flush it, and then keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it, flush it, flush, and you'll be able to look into it and it'll be empty, and then you can go ahead and remove everything else off that animal,
Yeah.
just to make sure you're 100% legal. You don't
Yeah.
want to lose that animal. You
Oh, because they will take it.
Oh,
You know?
100%. Imagine the man hours put in,
Oh yeah.
the money put into it, the time put into it. I mean, there's so much, that is put into these animals emotions and
Yep.
everything to
To just lose
skip
it.
a beat and,
Yeah.
and lose that
Yeah.
animal.
It's not worth it.
I think that's a big one because every state is different. Because now I even heard, which is, I think it's been for a couple years now, like 2 or 3 years, like even Georgia to Florida.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I know you were telling me about it a little bit the other
Yeah,
day.
and I forgot what county it is. I think in Florida they even started like you can't take that deer out of that county.
Oh,
So
you can't remove that deer, so you have to
yeah,
cape it, skull it, everything in that county.
yep. I forgot which county it is right now, but
So then from Georgia to here,
yeah.
it needs to be. And what is it?
And even just to
You have
be
to
sure,
call somebody? Don't you have to call like a? I heard you have
um,
to call, and sometimes the game warden will meet you there at the line or something. I forgot what it
I
was,
don't
but it's
know.
something. They're getting very
Yeah,
strict
I would look into
with
wherever
it.
you're hunting and make sure you're doing everything by the book
Yeah.
before you start crossing lines.
Talking about crossing lines is, you're gonna have that animal in a cooler,
Yeah.
right? And ice, obviously we all know ice melts.
Yep.
So the what I like to do is, I bleed my own. I bleed my meat. So what I'll do is I'll leave my meat on ice,
Yeah.
and then I'll kind of sometimes loosen the cap, or every once in a while drain all the blood out, and then put more ice in there. Sorry.
Uh huh.
But what I do is I'll bag my cape,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'll tie my cape off with a bag, and then put that bag on the ice. So
Yeah.
you always want to keep your cape
Yeah.
off of the water, right?
Yeah. 100% because you want to just keep it away from any water. Put it in a bag. If you're skeptical, put it in 2 bags. Just in case it has a hole. But as soon as the water gets into the actual cape, the bacteria starts to grow, and that's what causes the slippage.
Yeah.
So make sure it just stays off the water, um, just for future sake.
Yeah.
And yeah, even going back to when you're caping the deer and you're gonna put this on a wall, a full mount, full shoulder mount. The best thing, honestly, is the oscillating saw. Just to cut from the whole antler to antler.
Oh yeah.
Bro, you,
Yep.
you get the oscillating saw, it eats it up in a second, and it's quick. You get your antlers, you discard the head, so just so you don't have to bring it back
Yeah.
into that state that you're hunting,
Yeah.
or that you're going back home to.
Well, even now, I'm glad you brought that up because even caping an animal, you want more cape than less cape.
Yep.
So that's another one, guys. Don't short that cape.
Yeah.
I because you never know what your decision might be later. You
Yeah.
might want to do a wall pedestal, and the wall pedestal commands for more cape. So
Yep.
go past mid belly, and you could always trim it out,
and
right?
let me decide, and then because I've had people come in and be like, "Oh, I want a wall pedestal," and they cut it short. I'm like, "Hey, man, it's kind of short. Maybe there's something we could do, but most of the time,
Yeah.
yeah, it's too short. Either they kind of cut themselves short for a shoulder mount.
Yeah, you're kind of shot there.
Yeah.
No,
So
so yeah, just really
yeah,
think about the mount that you want, and you know, go with more cape than less cape. Yeah, and then like I personally like to I don't like to, so it matters how you roll it too. So I don't like to roll the face first into the cape, and the reason I don't like to do that is because that face will be the last thing to thaw.
yep.
So I like doing it the heavy side, the cape first, and leave the face exposed. So when you thaw out, the faces
Yeah.
gets thawed
And
out first.
like we said earlier, that's something that is all preference because I'm sure some taxidermists will be like wrap the face first, so in case the cape gets nicked or something, you're not messing with the face.
Well,
So
yeah,
it's just something like I said, you got to talk to, um,
preference.
yeah, preference.
Yeah,
Maybe the taxidermist wants to peel back the face first so he can work on it while the rest is thawing out. Maybe he doesn't want it to get nicked, so just speak to your local taxidermist on that.
Yeah, for sure. Another one, when you're descalling the face,
Yep.
if you guys dare to jump into that one, which I do recommend you
Yeah.
should do, is careful with like the tear ducts, like these little glands right here, these tear ducts right here can really get you. So in the eye, what I do is I'll put my finger in the eye and I'll kind of cut around it. But when you get to that tear duct there, you really got to pull out and kind of dig your knife into the hole of the deer because it's a gland
Into the skull.
Yeah, and into the skull there, those glands go in, so you could dig your knife in and dig it out because sometimes people will just cut it
Mhm.
and by chopping it, now you leave a void, and sometimes when that it
Yeah,
tans out, it'll stretch,
yeah,
right?
it doesn't come out as good as it could have, you know, because
Yeah,
now we got to fill in a hole. So yeah, it's just not gonna look as perfect as it could have.
yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
just try to keep your knife as close to the skull as you can, and just start chipping away at the tear duct. Try not to nick the actual gland there.
What's your preference on deer, the their ears? Like I really
Oh,
like my
yeah,
ears facing forward, not so much back sometimes, but
yeah.
I really like them facing forward. Um,
So I don't know if
I'm sorry, I like
you like them tucked
yeah, I
back.
like them
Yeah.
tucked back. I like them tucked back.
It's all
I like them
it's
tucked
all
back.
preference. I know it depends on the rack mostly. If you got a little rack and you put your ears forward, you're gonna take away from the rack. Kind of makes the rack look smaller. If you tuck it behind, you see more of the rack and you're not seeing most of the ears. Like this one here, if we would have done the ears here, you're not even gonna see that Florida rack. So and it looks like he's always on alert, just like
Yeah,
everything here
yeah,
in Florida.
yeah.
So that's
I
just
definitely like them back.
yeah.
It really it
Like this
just
guy,
puts
the one behind
emphasis.
you, you know,
My rack here.
your rack, his ears are tucked forward, but just the base is so thick that
Yeah,
it doesn't really matter.
it does him justice.
But
But that's always been like a
yeah, I
guys
got
will ask me,
yeah, yeah,
ears forward, ears back, and I'm like, man,
yeah,
it really like real wide deers.
yeah,
It doesn't really
yeah. It doesn't
matter.
matter.
Like my son shot this buck that we call busted wide open, and he's like 24 inches wide,
Yeah, yeah.
and
It's not gonna.
it doesn't.
Yeah,
You can put the ears in any
yeah. And
direction you want.
I get people that kill their first buck, and they're like, "Oh, I saw this buck with like the ears forward. I liked it." I was like, "Yeah, but you're gonna take away
Yeah,
from your rack though."
yeah.
But
Just like I personally don't. I don't like straight
yeah,
deer. I don't like. I just think it's like such an old school mount. I personally don't like a straight deer. Just like some like full sneak deers.
yeah,
I kind of like semi sneak.
yeah.
I
I know.
like.
I like semi sneak. Full sneak, it's just too intense
Mm,
for me. I don't.
yeah, and just really
And then
sticks out of the
and
wall
then
too.
what I like to do is I picture how the deer was presented to me. So like that's something that that I don't really care how it hangs in my wall. It doesn't matter if it's like facing another wall. I just like how all right, this
This
is
is the
how
way.
I saw him. But it's all preference,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I mean, now that you
But
said pictures,
yeah,
that's a very important thing. Is
yeah, for sure.
pictures.
And when you harvest that deer, you want to take as many pictures as you can. Try to take the side angles up front. I've had a lot of people show up my store and they're like, oh, this is my buck, whatever. The cape looks fine. Then later on, when we tan it, he had a big bruise from fighting, and so the bruises tend to slip. When they get full of that pus and stuff.
Yeah.
So I go back and I'm like, hey man, by any chance, do you know if this buck had a puncture wound and stuff? And most of the time they don't know. Only the pictures.
Well, remember they didn't descald it
Yeah.
probably
So
either. So
the pictures helped me a lot. Like there's this one buck that happened to me that he had a pretty big gash on his face, but his hairs were it was I guess winter, and the hairs were covering it. Later on, some of the hair started slipping, and I asked the guy, I was like, hey, this buck had a puncture wound in it. He's like, oh, I didn't even know. So he sent me the pictures, and sure enough, I was like, hey, look, it had a puncture wound here. We were able to do something cool with some blood, like if
oh,
he
is
was
that the
just fighting.
Scarface buck?
Yeah.
That's
So
pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
it's just important, and also like just the eyes. Maybe I don't know, just anything that has to do with the buck. You want to make sure you get it as close as you can
Yeah.
to how
Yeah.
he was living.
Well, I mean that's the way you want it.
Yeah, I mean that's the way I do it. That's the way I recommend people to do it.
Yeah.
But I know there's some people that want them perfect. That's not really how I like to do it.
No, I mean just like and this is gonna be a very controversial one right here. This one's gonna I'm sure I'll get a bunch of comments on this one, but I like if I've had a ton of pictures of that deer and I shoot that buck and now he's got a broke brow tine,
Yeah.
I'm fixing the brow tine.
Yeah.
And
No, I mean,
I've
yeah.
gotten heat from it.
No,
Oh,
I mean,
that's the way, but I'm like, man, I'm not making it up. I
Yeah.
have thousands of pictures of this animal
Yeah.
with this brow tine. I want the brow tine
Oh,
fixed, and then some people just give me heck for it.
No, if it has a brow tine, I'm fixing it too.
I
That's-
mean, now if the deer's missing a G2 or
Yeah,
a
yeah,
G3 and you have zero pictures to really confirm what
yeah,
that deer
yeah.
was,
Or how big it was
well,
or
yeah,
whatnot.
then
And that's another thing. I'm glad you brought it up. Just like the broad tine, I fixed. You have pictures of it before. It helps me, gauge how tall it is. I'm not gonna put a broad tine like this when it was like this big.
yeah, yeah,
So the pictures help a lot.
yeah. I mean, I know sometimes you can gauge how long it was because how thick the base started.
Yep.
Versus if it was real thin, then okay, well, it wasn't that
Yeah, yeah.
that tall. But those are circumstances that you kind of want to say when you tell the taxidermist, hey, I want you to fix this G2 or G4. Take that picture and tell him, hey, just don't expect him to kind of know.
Yeah.
You kind of want to put a piece of puzzle. I mean, it's kind of what you would do anyway. And then also important for you is making sure that they keep their tag.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, you want to keep your tag and make sure you get. We ask for your tag number, your hunter certification number, and we register all that stuff. Just to keep it on file. You want to make sure your taxidermist doesn't come into any issues with any of the outdoors officers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if something happens, we get fined, you guys get fined, and they take your buck. So
Yeah. Well, here's another good controversial one is do you really, I get it, and that's just the way you just have to score deer, but I don't really like deducting. I don't think anybody likes deducting.
yeah,
But I don't feel deducting is right because he grew it.
yeah,
Like when you go to score a deer and it doesn't match on one side and you have to deduct points because I'm just not a big deduct guy kind of thing. I don't know.
no,
Some
yeah,
some people, be like, well, what was your deer after deductions? And you're like, whatever, 171, but he grossed 185, and they're like, that doesn't matter. I'm like,
yeah.
yeah, it matters. He grew it.
Yeah, he was alive at that time.
Yeah, he grew
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
He grew. Now, whatever. If you want to wait the 30 days allotted to let the animal shrink to measure it, it is what it is. But
Yeah,
oh
I hear
man,
you. I hear you.
dude, we get into it all the time there.
Yeah.
We have a couple guys here that have shot 170 whatever fours, five, sixes, and then it ended up really netting like 168. And it's like, I shot a booner, and then some guys will be like, it's not really a booner because it didn't really. And it's like, dude, you shot a booner.
Yeah,
And then now they came out with this thing now that they consider, which I got to look more into it. Maybe you guys know more about this, but they consider. So a booner to me has always been a 170, 170 inches or bigger. That's always what a booner has been, is 170 in the Midwest, in Missouri. A booner has been 170 or bigger. But now I looked it up the other day. I was in Montana, I think, and we were looking up elk, and we ended up drifting off into whitetail, and ended up being where a 160 is considered a 3-year booner. I don't even know what the I mean, does that mean like you shoot a 160 and then 3 years you could like say you're a booner?
Congrats.
You own a booner, and then like after the third year, it's like,
Yeah.
no, you don't have a booner anymore. You just have a 160. I don't understand. I might have to look into it more, or maybe you guys can drop a comment on really what that means, because I even looked it up again. We were there at the lodge and we were talking about it, and because one of the guys had shot like a 166, and I'm like, oh, congrats on a booner, and another guy's like, that's not a booner, 170 or bigger. And then I looked it up and I'm like, he's got a 3-year booner. He's got a 3-year booner on record there. For 3 years you're a booner.
Oh, yeah. And that just shows you you always got to check every year's new rules and regs.
Yeah.
Because man, they change it in a heartbeat, and
100%.
you might be shooting a buck that was legal last year, but this year's.
I feel bad for all the previous 160 non-booners that missed their 3-year booner chance.
Yeah.
I was a booner at one time. Let me tell you a story.
Let them slide.
So let's also talk about salting your cape. I've heard that, we'll paint a picture. You're in the mountains, Colorado, Montana, whatever, and you're with a group of guys, you shoot an elk, congratulations, or a mule deer, or a whitetail, whatever the animal may be. But you have to sit there with your guys. You don't kind of just don't want
Yeah.
to ditch out for something. So you might have to sit there for a couple of days. And I've heard that guys will carry salt with them
Yep.
and then salt their cape. I mean, what does that really boil down to?
So salting the cape is probably one of the best ways you could do it.
Hey guys, I just want to take a brief second here and give a big shout out and thank you to all my sponsors. Tacticam, I absolutely love their cell cameras and I run a ton of them. It's a big part of my success. I would definitely go out and check them out and run some cell cameras from Tacticam if you don't already. Another sponsor of mine is Dirty South Taxidermy. He has mounted many of my animals. He does amazing work, full range of animals. Definitely go check out Dirty South Taxidermy. Let's get back to the show.
You cape your deer, you lay it out. So salting the cape pretty much just dehydrates the actual cape, so it takes out all the moisture. It's gonna be less weight on you. Um, but before you do that, you got to make sure you take off all the meat. You're gonna make sure you get down to um, just a white cape,
So you got to flesh all the meat off.
all the meat.
So you're probably better when you're caping him to just kind of pay attention to
Yeah,
only stay in the
yeah.
white.
So exactly, and that happens a lot as a taxidermist. I get a cape in, and it has a bunch of like neck meat and a bunch of stuff. So and that also I have to defrost it a lot longer just because a lot of meat's frozen. So you want to try to stay on the skin. Most of the time, unless you're here in South Florida, all the deers are gonna have a thick um, skin.
Yeah.
So
Especially in the winter.
yeah, it's hard to nick it, and those bigger animals too. So
And they have the hair to hide it if you do.
yeah,
Right.
and there's ways as a taxidermist that we can fix that, so it's not a big deal. But yeah, you want to make sure you get all that meat off. You're gonna salt it 12 hours, and that's the thing too. It depends how long you're gonna be out there. Salting takes a couple days, so you're gonna salt it for 12 hours. Make sure you lift it up, rinse it off, pretty much all the salt, and then salt it again. You just wanna just put a layer on top of it.
Can you bag it up? Or you just,
Oh no, you gotta leave it flat. You gotta leave it flat just so all the moisture gets
so you
extracted.
don't want to hang it because you don't want to get a bear involved in it. So
Yeah, yeah. So and then
bear being that thing like beef jerky.
yeah, and then after the 24, you hang it on like a piece of wood or something, and let all the moisture drip out, and you're pretty much good to go. As if it's rock or like solid, it's good. You're not gonna have any slippage. All the moisture's gone. No bacteria is gonna grow on it.
Gotcha. Okay. So there's
it takes-
definitely
Yeah, it takes a little bit of a process. Maybe I can make a video or something and talk more into it,
yeah.
but it is better. It's gonna be lightweight. You could just.
I mean, it's better than just not doing anything and
Oh,
just
yeah.
leaving it alone, right?
Yep, exactly.
I mean,
And you don't got to worry about keeping it cold because it's already done. All the moisture's dehydrated and you're not gonna have any slippage.
yeah, yeah, because that's always been like a thing, like
Yeah.
you go with guys and you guys are out there hunting and you shoot an animal and it's kind of like, all right, well,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
do you what do you kind of do? I mean, I get it, but a lot of times that I've done it, you can get out the meat,
Yeah.
And go from there. One that comes to mind is me and my wife in St. Vincent Island on that sandbar hunt. That was a magical magical hunt. That, I mean, if you guys have never checked out St. Vincent Island, you should. It's a good time. It's in the Panhandle of Florida, but me and my wife shot a sandbar there, and we packed it out. I mean, it was we did 2.5 mile walk,
Yeah.
and him right there, but
Yeah.
2.5 mile walk after, I don't want to say the number of miles on my bike, so nobody knows where I was, but lots of miles on my bike, and then 2.5 mile walk from there, and then but from the cutting and the quartering to she ended up, when found the animal, she ended up taking out 2 garbage bags, and she's like, "Who's the best wife in the world?" And I was like, "Yes, we got somewhere to put the meat." I remember I packed this thing of meat, dude, and when I picked up the 2 garbage bags, they broke from from the bottom. She had to tie a knot, and we had to line our bags, and dude, we had to take everything out of our bags and fill it with meat, and then we're just like walking down the trail, and everything's swinging from us because we had to pack everything out and then get back to our bicycles.
Yep.
It was
Oh, that's something you got to think about too. Like if you're backpacking, you're not gonna want to carry a bag of salt.
Yeah, I mean,
So
you
it's
know,
just
it's just what I've.
something to think about.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, I've heard guys,
yeah,
but I guess, well, oh, I guess you're gonna have to take care of a lot of salt. You know,
yeah,
I forgot what I was watching that a guy was like, oh, you can bring salt with you, but
yeah.
yeah, it's not gonna be like a bag.
No, no,
It's
it's
gonna be
like
a
I
lot
don't
of
know
salt.
if you guys got a pool, like a salt pool. That's pretty much what we use is a bag of salt. I think it's like a 5 pound bag.
Yeah, we're
And
not
it's
carrying that.
awkward. So
What's
it's
in your bag? I got a
yeah, a
bag
bag
of
of salt.
salt.
They're gonna think you're attracting deer or something. I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah, 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 yeah. No, so I
So
wonder. That was weird. So
yeah, if you have a lodge up there, and I don't know when you would really,
yeah, or maybe you're not that far from the truck, and you have it in the truck, and
yeah,
you could
something.
salt the cape in the truck, and then go back out and help your buddies
Yeah.
keep
Then
hunting.
you got to think about bears too if you're up there. So it's just something to think about wherever you are.
Yeah, now, like, knife choice is another one.
Yeah,
Knife choice. I like to keep those interchangeable knives
yeah,
that are razor sharp,
yeah. Those are good.
and they are good, but they do dull pretty
They
fast,
do.
in my
Yeah,
opinion.
you gotta have a couple on you.
Yeah, so I would definitely keep a bunch on you, but that knife, and the reason I say that specific knife is not so much on the caping animal part, is when you get to the head,
Yeah,
because a regular knife, I've caped a deer out with a regular knife,
yeah.
and it's nowhere
No,
near as easy as doing it with a razor blade.
yeah. But it's a double-edged sword too. Like you can have a razor blade knife, and then you're gonna go hit the tear duct, and you swipe right through.
Yeah,
So you just gotta be careful.
yeah, you gotta
Try
be
to
attentive.
yeah,
You really
and
gotta
then
pay attention.
you hit the skull and it dulls it too. Yeah, you just gotta be mindful and try to keep
Yeah,
as close to the skull as you can.
yeah,
It's usually pretty easy. You just try to lift up. Cut a little bit, peel it back.
yeah. I mean, I know there at the lodge, I do the full thing,
Yeah,
but I bring it back to the lodge.
yeah.
I'll
Hang it.
cape the animal, and then I'll debone the animal completely, and then I'll pack hindquarters, front legs, back straps, tenderloins, and I'll put them in their own bags. And then later on that afternoon, I'll completely deface the
Yeah,
animal with that knife, and that's the only thing I use that razor knife for. But
yeah.
if I had to have one knife that I was gonna take with me, it would probably be that razor knife, because I know that I can change out blades instead of
Mhm.
carrying multiple knives.
Yeah, different knives for different things.
Different knives for different things.
Yep.
So, paying attention to the temperature and really taking care of your animal. I think that's such a thing that's so overlooked,
Yep.
that people will, just assume that because it's in a cooler,
Yeah.
that it's okay.
Yeah.
So I'm
And
I'm glad that we were able to go over
yeah.
all this.
And it's not even with deer. Like I know like duck hunting, you get your ducks, you throw it in the back. Like you should keep a cooler with ice. Throw the ducks in there because they're more fragile. They're gonna probably have some issues later down the road. As if you're especially in here in South Florida, you keep them in the back of your truck, even from wherever you're hunting down to your house. It could cause some problems. Um,
I've always
and
heard you should tuck their head under their wing
yeah,
and then wrap them with paper towel. Is that right?
yeah,
Or
yeah, that's right. Tuck their head in. Get a damp paper towel and then throw them in a Ziploc bag. Make sure you try to seal it tight. I know there's some company that has a little kit that's ready to go. So it's
oh, it
pretty.
has everything?
Yeah, it's a whole kit that's ready, and it's pretty good. It has everything for the as far as the feet. The head. You wrap it. It has a Ziploc. It even has a tag that you put where you got it. Make sure it's federally legal and it's ready for the taxidermist.
Dang, that's
So
pretty cool.
yeah,
I've never even heard of that.
yeah. No, there's some things coming out for ducks. It's pretty good.
I know one of the hardest ducks that I had trouble with was a pintail once, because I was so like stressed out to not break
The tail.
the tail of the
Yeah,
pintail, that I was like,
yeah.
I didn't know where to put this dang
No,
thing
yeah,
in
yeah.
the kayak. I'm like, "All right, I can't mess the tail up." Um, so, but I'm assuming with ducks, do you want to keep them out of the water as well, or that
No,
since they're aquatic animals to
no. They
begin with, it doesn't
they
matter?
they float.
Oh,
It's
they
not really a big deal. So, um, but yeah, just as far as keeping them in the bed of your truck or wherever you're
yeah, just
hunting.
don't keep them in direct.
Yeah, I would put
Yeah.
them in a cooler. Just get them out of the heat.
And then I guess hogs. I mean, hogs are kind of,
Yeah,
I don't know,
they're
man.
kind of ruthless. You know,
Yeah,
live or dead.
I don't think I've ever had a
Yeah,
hog
even
slip.
like as far
Really.
as throwing it in the cooler and the ice melts, like it
Yeah,
doesn't matter.
yeah. I don't
They,
know. I've never really had. I've never had an issue
yeah.
where I've had. I did have a taxidermist once. Man, I felt bad for everybody's deer, but he had salted everybody's deer and he left them on the floor of his studio.
Oh,
And AC, I think, iced over or plumbing line broke or something like that, and it flooded. And this was on a
yeah.
Friday. And when he got there on Monday, all the capes were sitting in water the whole weekend.
No.
And yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's a taxidermist nightmare right there.
oof, I can't imagine what you guys go through.
No, yeah.
Especially
No,
keeping track of everybody's cape and and like you said earlier, things that the hunters really don't know about that the animals
no, yeah.
have nicks marks on them.
Yep.
I'm sure
No, and
sometimes.
I guarantee you, every buck in this room has some type of gash on them, and like when you're combing the deer, you're like, oh shoot, this guy had a wound there at some point. You could just tell the skin is a lot harder. You know that scar tissue.
You know what's crazy? You said combing a deer. You know, when I move them from wall to wall, sometimes I'll comb them
Yeah.
to get the
Oh
hair
yeah.
straight. There's still ticks on them.
Yo, yeah. They don't come off.
The amount of ticks on a if you don't believe me and you have a deer form,
Yeah.
get a comb. They're dead, so don't worry. But get a comb and go to your deer head
Yep.
and comb your deer and watch how many ticks.
Oh yeah, it's crazy.
It's mind blowing.
Yeah, and just a little trick if you are combing your deer, and you don't want the brush strokes, you get a damp paper towel, and you just pass it over, and all the brush strokes will be gone. So, it doesn't look as fixed up and pretty. It'll kind of clear off all those
I
brush
know some
strokes.
people use like a WD-40 sometimes or like a oil, but
Yeah, I mean,
WD-40 holds
yeah, I
dust
wouldn't.
too.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't do it. I'm sure
Maybe for
there's
the eyes to give them that little sheen on the eye.
yeah, there's actually a company there, a hair sheen that we use for the deer, and it just makes it shiny. So I don't know if they have something like that for normal folk that you can just buy it just a little bit, but
Yeah, that would
yeah,
be cool. But well, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I greatly appreciate it. And as always, if you ever want to watch more of what I do and or come hunting with me, please check out RMA Outfitters on Instagram and they can check you out.
yeah. So Dirty South Taxidermy on Instagram. If you're in South Florida, give me a holler or anywhere. Yeah,
And as always, please hit the subscribe, comment, like button. Until next time, I can't wait for the next video. Thanks
yeah.
guys for watching.
Thank you.